Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the beautiful DeRae of rainbowFRIGHT. DeRae, how you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, this is such an honor for me. But before we talk about why I asked you to come on here, first off, I want the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. You are a film school graduate and filmmaker who loves storytelling in all different forms. Um, Being on set for a whole lot of years and your love of movies, creating a YouTube channel just seems like the obvious next pivot when the big C when the pandemic happened back in 2020. So you started back doing the channel in January of 2020, and like you said, you are a film school graduate. You know all these things that you've done. What made you decide to focus on strictly being a horror channel?
Good question. I think I just really wanted to make my niche more specific. Um, because I wanted to do all kinds of things. I wanted to do stuff with food, video games, just all kinds of stuff. But I knew I had to narrow it down because after doing research on starting a YouTube channel, the big takeaway was, you want to be very specific in who you're trying to target. So that way people are just trying to get that content all the time from you. Even though I had that in mind, I still ended up doing more than one thing. I did horror movies, true crime, and horror story narrations. But that was all kind of like spooky, scary stuff. And I've always been kind of like the more spooky person in all of my friend groups. I watch all the horror movies that my friends shy away from and all of that. And so even though I didn't really narrow it down, I still wanted to be, I guess, a sort of a theme, which was just
Right.
spookiness. Yeah, and I've since kind of done less narrations and true crime videos, but I do want to do some more of those and actually are working on some right now for October. But yeah, I've just always loved horror, even though as a filmmaker and lover, I've just loved all kinds of movies.
Well, and you kind of touched on the next thing I wanted to talk about, the narrations and things of that sort. Like you love being a voice actor, making the channel really helped you to discover how much you love to do voice acting and you want to do more of that in the future. Um, had you ever done any type of voice acting before you had done the channel?
No, actually, I didn't. So I really don't know why I decided to start, reading stories in front of the camera, or in front of the mic rather. It just I just loved watching those videos and listening to those videos and just wanted to try my hand at it just to kind of give myself some variety in my content. And yeah, I just realized after a few videos that I really loved to do it.
Right. And it's funny because not to outdo yourself, but you're a film school graduate. You've done so many different things on set. You're doing a YouTube channel, but she talked about it a tiny bit. She is a huge foodie. Going out, trying new restaurants, learning new recipes, and also has a goal one day to travel and hope, all around the world on a food tour and document the whole experience. So, I mean, I would have, I'll fit me in your suitcase if you go, because I would like to try it too. And you
Yes,
can just read me bedtime stories too. That would be just fine. So you
there
can
you
practice
go.
the narration too. But obviously with something like that, is cooking and being, food tasting, is that something you've always really been had a big interest in as well, or is that something you developed later on?
I think that actually developed a lot during COVID as well because we were frightened of COVID and we only ate groceries. We even washed our groceries. And
Hmm.
that was for like over a year. And I was just craving a bunch of stuff. So I wanted to learn how to make a bunch of different things like butter chicken, Korean corn dogs, and so many more things. But before COVID, I did like to cook and enjoyed my time in the kitchen. But during COVID is definitely when it flourished for sure.
Right. Well, okay, now I got to ask, what's your favorite dish to prepare?
Ooh, um, basically like noodles, any kind of noodles, more specifically black bean noodles or a ramen noodle with my vegetables, spam and broccoli or egg also on top. Really basic, but to get more extravagant with it, I really love making birria tacos because they're just so delicious and it makes a lot of food too.
All right. So I'll be there in about 25 minutes. So
Sure, let's do it.
so this is one of those things, like I said, to have all these different things under your belt, I think is absolutely phenomenal. And the way that you guys can follow along is by following her on social media. I have all her social media links down in the description, and you want to become a part of that YouTube family. So the YouTube
Yeah.
link is down there as well. So make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel so you can stay up to date on everything DeRae has to offer for the next, however many years she decides to do YouTube and social media. So another thing we talked about briefly at the beginning was, you are a film school graduate, you are a filmmaker. I know NDAs exist, and especially, post COVID, things are really hard to kind of lock down. But do you have anything film wise coming up that you're able to talk about at this moment?
Oh man, I wish, but no, I haven't been on a film set in so many years. The
Hmm.
next project I work on will probably be something of my own, maybe a music video or a short, but eventually I do want to make a feature-length film.
That's awesome, and I cannot wait to check it out. If you need an actor,
Yes.
I know a guy, so
All
make
right.
sure keep me updated on that too. And it's amazing because in order to be in the horror world, in order to have your YouTube channel, in order to be a horror writer director, horror had to start for you somewhere, DeRae. So now I would like to go back to the past and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie, and DeRae, the first horror movie that you watched was.
Poltergeist.
Love it so much.
Yeah.
I've said for a very long time, this is probably the best, and if not the best, the scariest PG horror movie of all time. So, do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen Toby Hooper's Poltergeist?
Yes, Toby Hooper's. Um, I definitely was young, had to be under 5. And I kind of mentioned before a little bit that, you know, this is one of the first horror films that really just was embedded in my brain because horror has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. Um, my mom didn't watch horror so much, but she didn't really restrict what I was watching. And my dad is all about horror. And I remember watching Evil Dead with him all the time in the summer times and repeating back the lines and things. And, in friends' houses and family member houses, we were just always watching horror. So it was just, I guess, a family affair. I don't know. And friends, when I was younger, were into it. And yeah. And being a person who just loved movies and TV, Poltergeist just always stuck out in my mind because it was this little girl about my age, and she was just fascinated and drawn to the television for different reasons other than myself, but she was still fascinated with that box, which just always intrigued me.
Right. Well, and that was actually going to be part of my next question is, there's a lot of effective scenes throughout Poltergeist, but before we ask which scene it was that affected you the most, do you think that because Carol Ann was your peer, that this movie may have impacted you a little bit more? 'Cause you're seeing another young lady on screen that's about your age, so it's easier for you to identify with what she's going through than say, you're watching um, The Dark and the Wicked, where it's all adults and it's all dark and scary. In Poltergeist, there are moments of levity because you have that really young lady in that role. Do you think that that helped to draw you in and maybe identify with the movie a little bit more?
Oh yeah, most certainly. It was just cool seeing her as a lead person in a movie, although you could argue that the adults were the main characters or the leads rather. But that was her movie, and you didn't see a whole lot of that. And I hadn't seen Firestarter yet.
Right.
And The Exorcist I didn't see till my teen years, but yeah, I gravitated toward movies where a young girl was the lead role most of the
Mhm.
times, like The Little Princess or Heidi and The Secret Garden. Seeing these girls and seeing them be strong and make positive change in the world, which is always fun for me to see.
Still is to this day as a 37-year-old man. I have two daughters and I hope that they rule the world someday. So I
Oh
totally understand.
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
Now, obviously, like we said, it did impact you a lot because you're watching a peer. But what scene would you say it was, DeRae, that affected you the most?
Oh man, it definitely had to be when Marty, one of the investigators, is peeling at his face in front of the mirror because it's a mind trick, and it it just is creepy because you're seeing that but it's not actually happening, and having your psyche and your what you're seeing be manipulated is just terrifying because you're just so vulnerable to that. There's nothing at all that you can do.
Yeah.
Kind of in the same realm as dreams. You just never know what's real and what's not. And then before that, we get the imagery of the steak and the chicken, which is just nasty. And it's just a good lead up to seeing him just peel away at his face, which reminds me a lot of The Fly, which I also just love seeing poor McFly just, deteriorating slowly.
Yeah. Well, and I just think it's hilarious that he's like, I'm gonna go grab a snack, and he grabs a chicken leg and a steak. Like the balls of this guy. Like, hey, I'm just gonna grab a quick snack real quick
Oh,
from this stranger's
yes.
house, and he takes their steak and their chicken leg. Like, whoa, dude!
He
Like,
must have been hungry.
you got some balls on you to do that. Like, don't worry, I'm a paranormal investigator. Like it's all right. Um, so yeah, this is a movie that has stood the test of time, and there's a lot of people to this day that still talk about how important Poltergeist is, not just in the horror community, but in pop culture. How many times have we seen Carol Ann parodied throughout many different things? So the impact this movie has on pop culture is huge. So it is a franchise, though. There are 4 movies in the Poltergeist franchise. Is one your favorite in the franchise? And if not, what is?
It's really hard. I do love all 3 films, to be honest with you. Um, but I would just have to go with the original because it's the original, and it
Right.
just, those lines just stick out in your brain and it's just a familiar feeling just watching, and a comfort feeling watching that movie in a weird way. But I really love where they took it in the sequel, right after them leaving that first house, and the third installment takes it so far away but still in the same world enough that we get a little bit more of the story that was pretty much done.
3 will always be my favorite. I don't know what it is. I love Poltergeist 3. I think it's so fantastic. But that's a whole conversation for another day. But with the 4 films that we talked about, you have the original 3, and then obviously it got the remake treatment. Hollywood loves to do the remake treatment. I usually ask people, would you like to see your first horror movie remade today? Obviously, that's already happened. We've had a Poltergeist remake. Did you see the Poltergeist remake? And if so, what were your thoughts on it?
I did see it, and I wanted to like it so much, because there were some really great moments here and there, but overall it just wasn't for me.
Sure.
I don't mind remakes. I love, you know, remakes that do things on their own, but still keeping the same story. Or if they just go completely off the wall, it's fine. And this one had all the boxes checked. It's like so annoying and weird at the same time because it has everything that a good movie and a good sequel would have. But it just didn't feel spooky to me. It just wasn't. The cinematography was weird. The director is fine, the cinematographer is fine, their body of work is fine, but something just wasn't gelling for me as far as the aesthetic and the look of the movie. It just felt too like a show, or just not serious enough for me.
Sure. Well, one big thing I got to give the remake props for is changing Maddie's name, changing Carol Ann to Maddie. There's only one Carol Ann. Heather O'Rourke was Carol Ann. So I got to give the movie props for honoring Heather O'Rourke's memory and not recasting Carol Ann, but casting Maddie. And they even made her polar opposites. She's got the brown hair
Right.
where Heather O'Rourke had the blonde hair. Like she's the
Yeah.
polar opposite of what Heather O'Rourke was. And I'm with you. I don't dislike the remake. It's just a very forgettable movie to me.
Yes.
We wouldn't seen it in cinema when it came out, and then we just recently rewatched it for one of our versus episodes, and um, I didn't remember anything about it as we were watching it. I was like, wow, I don't remember any of this happening. But I mean, like it's fine. If it had been called anything else besides Poltergeist, I think I probably would have liked it a little more. But they took their shot, and I've seen worse remakes for sure. At least they did some things
Yes.
that were very inventive, that were their own. It wasn't a carbon copy of the original with CGI instead of practical, which I applaud for. But it's just I'm with you. There was just something about it where it just didn't make it stick with me. So
Yes.
um, we know which scene affected you the most from the OG Poltergeist, DeRae. But what would you say your favorite scene from Poltergeist is?
Um, I always loved when the mom, Diane, and Carol Ann are in the kitchen and the chairs are far from the table. And she pushes the chairs back in, the mom does, and she's talking to Carol Ann about it. And in that same space, just right off camera, she turns and the chairs are back on the table, or not back on, but now they're stacked. And I just loved when the mom is talking to Carol Ann and she's asking her, is it the TV people? And she's like, yeah. And it was just cool to see a mom believing the child and just seeing
Yeah.
that relationship where there was like mutual respect.
And what's
I
even
love
more
that.
impressive about that scene, even when you watch it today, it's all in an unbroken shot. Like the whole thing is just one
Yes,
camera on an unbroken shot. It's so impressive. Like even
exactly.
watching it today, I'm like, wow, like that is one amazing look in one shot. Like it looks great. The whole shot looks fantastic. One of my favorite shots in the
Yes.
whole film because it's just that one long unbroken shot, and I love
They
it.
had 10 people ready to put the chair up there really quick, it took seconds. So much fun.
Right. Yeah, it's a blast to go back and rewatch. So, um, we know how horror started for you with Poltergeist and what that movie means to you. But here for a second, I do want to throw a little bit of a curveball at you here. My little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, DeRae? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
That question is so, so hard because there's so
That's
many.
why I never tell anyone
Yeah.
I'm going to ask it. I don't want people to
Um,
think about it beforehand. I just want to, boom, this is what I'm going to say.
um, but to pick one, I will go with Candyman, the original Candyman from 1993.
Helen.
Yes.
Cannot go wrong with my guy Tony Todd. What a
Oh,
fantastic, amazing movie.
yes.
Um, we were just talking about this franchise the other day and how two gets unreasonable amount of hate. I don't know why people hate part two so much. I don't think Farewell to
Yeah.
Flesh, I don't think is a bad film. Day of the
No.
Dead, Tony. But I think the OG Candyman is just one of those films that is underrated. And I don't mean it's underappreciated. I
Yes.
don't mean there hasn't been a fair amount of eyes on it. As a film as a whole, I mean, the cinematography is beautiful. Shooting it in Chicago, having to hold back gangsters from going to interrupt shoots, like the
Yeah.
score. Oh my
Yes. The
God, the score
sound.
is just
Yes.
haunting.
Yes.
And it's one of the best horror love stories of all
Yes.
time.
Yes.
Daniel Robitaille, what he went through for Helen, in this incarnation of Helen, he got his hand cut off. He got covered in honey and the bees because he loved that woman. It's really the horror Romeo and Juliet, man. Like it's such a fantastic love story and a movie that genuinely scared me as a kid. Like one
Yes.
of the scenes in my life that I think is the scariest scene that at that time that still affects me is when the little boy gets his penis cut off. And you see the camera going and the little boy's laying. When I watched it as a kid, I was like, fuck this, pee in my pants from now on, never going in a bathroom again. Didn't know that could happen in a bathroom. Was it the toilet? What happened? I need answers. So, yeah, that was just one of those scenes that just really, and again, I'm not trying to be disingenuous and I'm not trying to be subservient, but Candyman wasn't made for me. And I can honor that. I can respect that. As a horror movie, I think it's fantastic. When it comes to the message, it wasn't made for me. I get that. But it doesn't mean that I can't have empathy and
Oh,
sympathy and
yes.
understand what the writers and directors and actors are getting across, just like the newest Candyman that came out, the sequel, technically.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I've never in my life had a moment where I was scared like she was in the backseat of that cop car when he's like, he came right at us. You saw it. The intimidation he was using towards her. I've never had to feel something like that, but it doesn't mean I can't have empathy and watch the movie and feel for somebody. What
Of
when
course.
Nia DaCosta was doing that with Jordan Peele, were they thinking of Ken Sledge when they were making that film? No, but they knew that people with empathy and sympathy would have feelings for what these people go through, and I love a horror movie with a message that is still a horror movie first. So Candyman,
Yeah.
fantastic film.
Exactly.
Um,
Yes.
and when I die, I would love for Tony Todd to narrate the book of my life because that guy's voice is just angelic. Have you
Yes,
gotten the
it
honor
is.
to meet Tony before?
No, not yet. I haven't been to too many conventions, but I'm trying to get to some more for sure.
Cannot recommend it enough. He is a
Yes.
gentle, he's huge. He is a huge guy. but he is just a sweetheart and he's kind and he's gentle. He's just one I was blessed to be able to shake his hand. He's just a very kind, warming soul. So um
Yeah.
DeRae, I do want to thank you again for coming and hanging out with me and talking about your first horror movie, your favorite horror movie. But before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question. We're going to go back to Poltergeist, and what we're going to do here is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking Poltergeist on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. All we're doing is ranking Poltergeist on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So, zero skulls being not effective, five being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. DeRae, what would your ranking of Poltergeist be?
Um, Poltergeist affected me, I'd say 4.5 skulls out of 5.
Which is a very, very fair ranking. So, I know I said this at the beginning, guys, but we are at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, please make sure that you are following DeRae on social media. Please make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel so you can become part of her YouTube family as well. DeRae, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really does help the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. All our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.